Many, many years ago, I was in England. And when I was in England, one of the things that fascinated me the most was how these buildings would be 300, 400, 500 years old and still standing. 500 years. One building, still standing. All the door jambs still straight. All the windows still straight. Everything still functioned. 500 years. How does that happen? Well, I'm going to tell you how that happens today, and I'm also going to tell you what that has to do with leadership. And you're not going to believe how significant that is in your own life, in the practices that you have even today. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. It really is fascinating to me to watch the number of people who want to change the baseline of what we consider normal. Now, don't worry about the politics in this, even though that's one of the places it manifests itself. It also manifests itself in education, in personality styles, and even relationships. What is normal in a marriage? Let me back up just a few years and say, I guess it's been about maybe 12 or 15 years ago, my wife and I volunteered with an organization to provide pre-marriage counseling, meaning we would sit down with couples who are about to get married and kind of walk through a process with them. We've now been married 27 years, but we would walk through the process with them and say, here's some things you can expect. Maybe you haven't talked about this. I mean, I know where you're out dating and you're having dinner and everything is good, and maybe you've had a couple of little squabbles, but life is going to throw some stuff at you. And so you're going to need a foundation to build that relationship on. You're going to need to dig into the ugly stuff of your own past, the realities of who you are, and ask some really tough questions of yourself and your future spouse before you really dig into this. And it's hard to accept that that's true, but it is. It's also hard to accept that sometimes those questions, they're not comfortable. They're going to demand of you things that you don't want to talk about, but you need to. And those questions reveal something that help a building stand for 500 years. See, these questions reveal what we call the foundations, the foundational issues of who we are, the ideas that bring us to where we live now. Because they all start with beliefs. The belief systems, the things that we hold dear, the things that we value, and the decisions that we make in life, well, they all come from those beliefs. So if I believe about a husband and wife, a certain thing about a relationship, if I believe that a husband and a wife should have certain roles, should function in a certain way, should do certain things, and my partner doesn't, we're going to have some issues in our relationship, and those issues are going to be directly tied to the foundational beliefs that I hold. Now, that can destroy a marriage. That can destroy a working relationship. That could destroy a team of any sort. Whether you're talking about the highest level military operators, the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, the Special Forces of foreign countries, if they don't have a belief system that starts on the same foundation, then their ability to function together is going to be hindered. And the same is going to be true of your team if you're a leader of any type. You've got to know what it is that they believe about why you do what you do. You've got to know what it is that they believe about your end game. What is the vision for completion? How do we know what success will look like and feel like? If we don't know what success will look like and feel like, then how will we know if we've achieved it? How will we know if we're even on the right track? See, one of the challenges I see in leadership today is the ambiguity that moves from one ideology to another, based on the whims of the day, based on what seems to be most socially acceptable, culturally acceptable for the moment. There are things being purported, promoted, and promised today that 25 years ago would never have been mentioned in an executive boardroom. There are things right now that major global companies are promising to their constituents. And by that I mean their consumers and their employees and their stakeholders and their shareholders. Stakeholders and shareholders are not the same, by the way. If you're not aware of that, then you need to do a little research on the terminology. Those are two significantly different groups of people, stakeholders and shareholders. But when a company decides that because today's culture, meaning the last 15 minutes, has changed, because what we believe or what we're being told from mainstream media, from our leadership, from our executive councils, from our board members, from our government politicians, what we're being told today is different than what we were told last Monday or the last Monday before that or 15 minutes ago. Then we need to change on a dime. We need to be able to move with agility. We need to be able to change the process, change the vision, change the outcome, even change why we do what we do. The challenge with that is there's no foundation in it. There's no foundation in it. See, the reason that a house in Europe, in England, stands for so long is because of the process that's used to build it. A friend of mine, when I was in England, I spent about 2 years with this family, and when he talked about building his house, he told me how they had to dig down through the dirt to the bedrock. And he built it himself because he was a carpenter and an engineer, sold windows as his vocation, but he understood all of this, drew up his own blueprints, got them approved, went into the process. And when they dug down to build the foundation, they went almost 7 feet through the dirt to get to the bedrock before they could put down the first layer of the foundation. Now, most people wouldn't dig a 7-foot foundation. In fact, here in Texas, many of them, they build up the topsoil, then they lay a form, and that form may be 8 to 12 inches deep, and they pour the concrete in there, and then they build a 75,000-pound house on top of 18 inches of concrete. Not so in England. And that's why in many places, in Texas especially, we have houses that have foundation problems. Not so in England. Because the inspector that comes to see your house when you're in England, he asks, where is your bedrock? How far down is your bedrock? And what do you have on the base of that? How thick is the cement or the concrete that you're planning to build your house upon? And how many square feet? And what substances will you be building it from? And what is the weight of this house when you're done? See, those are the kind of engineering questions that really challenge the quality of your foundation. If you're going to build 2 stories versus 1, 3 stories versus 2, 5 stories, 110 stories, you can't build that until you've done the business of digging deep through the dirt, through the muck, past whatever else might have been there to get to the bedrock. See, in humans, that's your core beliefs. In a relationship, in an organization, in a team, you've got to get past the dirt, past the topsoil, past the muck, and down to the bedrock of core beliefs before you can build something of substance. If you fail to do that, the result will be that you have built something that isn't going to stand. The first windstorm is going to blow it over. The first impact of any sort, a storm, a rainstorm, a flood, wind, somebody trying to drive through it, and the whole thing is coming down. If you've built a foundation that is built to withstand all of those things, a foundation that goes all the way to the bedrock and that it's built for the weight that you plan to build upon it, you have an entirely different structure. You have a relationship, a team, an organization, a philosophy that will stand the test of time. Now, some people will say that some of the ideologies that I hold, some of the principles that I operate by, some of the core values that are deeply important to me are old-fashioned or outdated. Old-fashioned or outdated. Yeah, that's a dated, not outdated. Those outdated principles to you, those old-fashioned principles to you, but to me they're core values. They're a foundation built on a bedrock that has stood the test of time thus far. Things that even when the whims of society, like the winds of the waves, are tossed back and forth, those foundations are still there. Those things that we believed to be true 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, are still true today. Oh, we've had plenty of people try to disprove them. We've had plenty of people come up with new philosophies and new ideas, but Even comedian Bill Maher says these ideas of yours about what the way society should be, they're not brand new ideas. You didn't think anything new up. You're being sold a bill of lies that has been tried for over 200 years, and they have led to the deaths of hundreds of millions. These are not new ideas. They're old ideas, and they were bad ideas when they came around. They're even worse ideas now. When we talk about the foundations of our societies, our cultures, our teams, leaders know that you've got to build a solid foundation before you can build anything up on it. And I don't just mean build up vertically, but maybe it's building up your people. It's building up your team. It's building your vision. You can't build anything in quicksand. I don't care how beautiful the structure is. I don't care how elegant the art form is. If you're building on quicksand, it will soon disappear. It's going to sink right into the quicksand and be gone. If you're going to build something of substance in a relationship, in an organization, in a team, in yourself, you've got to dig past the dirt in your life and get to the bedrock, the foundation of who you are and what you believe. When you get there, you'll have something solid to build on. And I'm going to give you a little clue. Chances are really high that when you dig down really deep into what you believe and why you believe it, where did these ideas come from, you're going to find that the deeper you get, the more solid you find your beliefs. The more likely they are that those are long-standing beliefs. Maybe not long held by you. Maybe you didn't think of them right off the top because there's been a lot of clutter. But when you get right down to what are the things that are most important to me, what are the core values that I want my decisions to be made on? What are the decisions that I want for my children? What are the practices I want in my household that will impact my children and grandchildren? When we get past the dirt of our own idiosyncrasies and our own wants and dislikes, when we get past all those things, our selfishness, I think what you're going to find is that your core values and my core values, they're a lot alike. Because when you dig past all the dirt and all the topsoil, the bedrock is bedrock. It's rock. It's solid rock. In some places it may be limestone, in some places it may be a different kind of stone, but when you get down to the bedrock, it's bedrock. And there's a reason they call it that. It's the solid place that you can build your foundation. So let me challenge you as leaders. Take some time to dig in. Dig into what you believe. Dig into why you believe it. Ask yourself, if I continue on the path as a leader, gaining people to follow behind me, going in the same direction, believing the things that I believe, executing through life the way that I execute through life, making the same kinds of decisions, will this last? Or will it change the next time culture changes? Will it collapse when the wind blows? Will it cower down in the face of the first storm? If you're not sure about the answer to that, it's time to dig a little deeper. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.